My parents gave my brother a $950,000 home. Then, they came to take my house. But when I refused. My name is Zaria Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, a marketing coordinator in Charlotte, North Carolina, living in the townhouse I worked 3 jobs to afford. Life was finally stable until one rainy Thursday evening when my parents showed up at my door, suitcases in hand, tears in their eyes, begging me to let them stay. They claimed they'd lost everything, that bad business deals had cost them their home. I opened my door because they were family, but something in their story didn't sit right. Their desperation seemed rehearsed, their explanations too vague. What I discovered next would shatter everything I thought I knew about loyalty, family, and the price of being the responsible child. If you were standing in my shoes, facing the people who raised you with lies dripping from their lips, what would you do? Keep reading, because what happened after I said no was beyond anything I could have imagined. It was 7:30 p.m. on a Thursday, and I was curled up on my couch with leftover Thai takeout, finally relaxing after a brutal week launching our new campaign at the agency. The rain drummed against my windows in that soothing way that makes you grateful to be inside. That's when the doorbell rang, not once, but 4 sharp, urgent chimes that cut through my peace like a knife. I opened the door, and there they were. Mom and Dad, looking smaller somehow, their shoulders sagging under the weight of 2 large suitcases each. Mom's mascara had run slightly, creating dark smudges under her eyes, and Dad's usually perfect hair was disheveled from the rain. "Zaria, honey," Mom's voice cracked as she spoke. "We need to stay with you. We lost the house. Bad investments, sweetheart. We have nowhere else to go." Dad nodded grimly beside her. "It's just temporary, baby girl. Just until we get back on our feet." But his eyes wouldn't meet mine, dancing instead around my doorframe like he was memorizing an escape route. I stood there frozen, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. These were my parents, the same people who'd always seemed to have their lives together, who'd never asked me for so much as a loan. Dad owned a successful plumbing business, and Mom had her real estate license. They lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Myers Park that they'd owned outright for 15 years. What happened? I managed to ask, stepping aside to let them in from the rain. Mom's explanation came in rushed, overlapping sentences about market crashes and bad advice from financial advisors. Dad mumbled something about contractors who didn't pay and clients who disappeared. Their words felt scripted, like they'd rehearsed this conversation on the drive over. I offered them my guest room, saying they could stay for a few days while they figured things out. Mom hugged me so tightly it almost hurt, whispering, "You're such a good daughter, Zaria. We knew we could count on you." But as I watched Dad drag their suitcases upstairs with the confidence of someone who planned to stay, and as Mom started rearranging my kitchen spices without asking, a cold knot of suspicion began forming in my stomach. Something about this whole situation felt wrong. And I was about to find out just how wrong it really was. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and the sound of my parents moving through my house like they owned it. Mom was humming while she cooked, wearing one of my aprons, and Dad was in my living room adjusting the angle of my TV with a screwdriver he'd apparently brought from his toolkit. "Morning, sweetheart," Mom called out cheerfully when she saw me. "I made pancakes and bacon, just like when you were little." It was the kind of domestic scene I dreamed of as a kid, when I felt invisible next to my golden boy brother Cameron. But now it felt performative, like they were playing house in my space. Over breakfast, I tried to pin them down on specifics. "So what's your plan for finding a new place?" I asked, cutting into my pancakes. Mom's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Oh, we're still exploring our options," she said vaguely. Dad chimed in without looking up from his plate. "Market's tough right now. Might take a while to find something suitable." Their non-answers made my skin crawl. When I pressed harder, asking about their savings or whether they'd contacted a realtor, they deflected with questions about my job or comments about how much they loved what I'd done with the townhouse. The strangest part was how comfortable they seemed. Mom reorganized my pantry, claiming it would be more efficient this way. Dad hung a family photo in my hallway, one where Cameron and I were kids, him grinning in his Little League uniform while I stood awkwardly to the side in my school clothes. "Don't you think you should ask before redecorating my place?" I said, trying to keep my voice light. Dad shrugged. "It's just one picture, Zaria. Family should be on the walls." That afternoon, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I called my college roommate Ashley, who now worked as a paralegal downtown. "Can you do me a favor?" I asked, keeping my voice low as I paced my bedroom. "I need someone to check public records on a property sale. My parents claim they lost their house, but something doesn't add up." Ashley didn't ask questions. She'd known my family dynamics for years. "Give me the address and their names. I'll see what I can dig up." While I waited for Ashley to get back to me, I watched my parents more closely. They weren't acting like people who just lost everything. There was no frantic phone calling, no urgent apartment hunting, no visible stress about their financial situation. Instead, Dad spent the afternoon fixing things in my house that weren't broken, and Mom made herself comfortable with my Netflix account. When I brought up my brother Cameron during dinner, mentioning that maybe he could help them out, they exchanged a quick glance. "Oh, you know Cameron," Mom said with forced casualness. "He's got his own situation to deal with right now." "What situation?" I asked. Dad jumped in. "New business venture. He's pretty tied up with that." Another vague answer. Another deflection. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. That night, as I lay in bed listening to my parents settle into my guest room like they belonged there, Ashley texted me, "Found something interesting. Calling you tomorrow." I had a sinking feeling that whatever she'd discovered was going to change everything. Ashley's call came at 10 a.m. sharp while I was at work, trying to focus on a client presentation despite my churning stomach. "Zaria," her voice was gentle but firm, "you need to sit down for this." I stepped into an empty conference room and closed the door. "What did you find?" "Your parents didn't lose their house," Ashley said slowly. "They sold it. Last month. $875,000 cash sale. The money went to a property purchase in Cameron's name, a luxury condo in South End." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the conference table, my knuckles white. "Are you absolutely sure?" "I'm looking at the deed transfer right now. Your parents sold their house and bought Cameron a $875,000 condo." "Zaria, I'm so sorry." I hung up and sat in that conference room for 20 minutes, staring at the wall while my world rearranged itself. My parents hadn't fallen on hard times. They'd chosen Cameron, again. They'd sold their home, their security, their future, and handed it all to my brother. And then they'd come to my door with lies, expecting me to pick up the pieces. I left work early, claiming a family emergency. Which, I supposed, was exactly what this was. When I got home, my parents were settled in like permanent residents. Mom was doing laundry, my laundry, mixed with theirs, and Dad was on my couch watching ESPN with a beer from my refrigerator. "We need to talk," I said, my voice deadly calm. Mom looked up from folding my shirts. "What's wrong, honey? You look upset." I pulled out my phone and showed them the property records Ashley had sent. "I know you sold your house. $875,000. All of it went to buy Cameron a condo in South End." The color drained from Mom's face. Dad set down his beer and leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Who told you that?" he demanded. I didn't flinch. "Does it matter? I want the truth. Right now." Mom's hands shook as she set down my shirt. "Zaria, calm down. It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," I said, stepping closer. "Explain how you lost your house when you actually sold it to your golden boy." Dad stood up, his face reddening. "Don't you dare talk about your brother like that." "My brother." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The same brother who hasn't called me in 2 years? The one who's apparently too tied up with business to help his homeless parents. Mom reached for my arm. "We were going to tell you, sweetheart. It's complicated." I yanked my arm away. "No, what's complicated is how you thought you could lie to my face and move into my home permanently." "Permanently?" Dad's voice rose. "We never said." "You didn't have to say it." I interrupted. "You're doing laundry, hanging pictures, fixing things I didn't ask you to fix. You're not looking for apartments or jobs or anything else. You sold your house for him and figured you'd just take mine." The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, I saw them clearly for the first time, not as my parents, but as two people who'd always seen me as the backup plan, the reliable daughter who'd clean up their messes while they showered attention on their precious son. Mom started crying. We raised you better than this, Zarya. Family takes care of family. You're right, I said quietly. They do. So where's Cameron now? Neither of them answered, and that told me everything I needed to know. The confrontation hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Mom's tears were real now, not the calculated performance from before, but they only hardened my resolve. Dad paced my living room like a caged animal, his hands opening and closing into fists. You want to know why we did it? He finally exploded. Cameron had an opportunity. A real chance to make something of himself. That condo, it's not just a place to live, it's an investment in his future. I stared at him in disbelief. An investment? Dad, he's 32 years old. What future investment has he ever made that didn't crash and burn? This is different, Mom insisted, wiping her eyes. His girlfriend Autumn has connections in the tech world. They're launching a startup. Cameron just needed the right environment to. To what? I cut her off. To finally become the success you've been pretending he is for the last decade? Dad took a step toward me, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You've always been jealous of your brother. The accusation hit me like a slap. Jealous? I'm jealous of a man who's never held a job for more than 6 months, who borrowed money from you for his music career and spent it on a motorcycle, who showed up to your anniversary dinner high and embarrassed everyone. He's trying to turn his life around, Mom pleaded. With my inheritance. The words erupted from me before I could stop them. Because that's what this is, isn't it? You took the money that should have been split between Cameron and me someday, and you gave it all to him. What happens when you get old and need care? What happens when you can't work anymore? They didn't answer because we all knew the truth. I was supposed to be their retirement plan, their safety net, their reliable daughter who'd sacrifice everything to take care of them. I want you to leave, I said quietly. Mom's sob caught in her throat. Zarya, please. We have nowhere else to go. You have Cameron's luxury condo, I replied. The one you bought him with your entire future. Dad's face twisted with rage. After everything we've done for you. What have you done for me? I interrupted, my voice rising again. Paid for Cameron's college while I took out student loans? Missed my graduation because he had a gig? Talked about his potential while I was working 60-hour weeks to buy this place. The list could have gone on forever, but I was tired of keeping score. I was tired of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who cleaned up messes I didn't make. You have until Sunday to find somewhere else to stay, I said. I'm not kicking you out on the street, but I'm not enabling this either. Dad stepped closer, and for a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. You ungrateful little. Tom, stop, Mom grabbed his arm. Please, let's just talk about this reasonably. But reason had left the building the moment they decided to sell their house for Cameron and lie to me about it. I walked to my bedroom and locked the door, needing space to think and breathe. Through the door, I could hear them arguing in hushed, angry whispers. Dad wanted to teach me a lesson about respect. Mom was crying about losing both her children. Neither of them seemed to understand that they'd lost me the moment they'd chosen Cameron over honesty. I called Ashley and told her everything. She listened without judgment, then said simply, "You're doing the right thing. Family doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm." Sunday was 3 days away. 3 days for them to figure out their next move, and for me to prepare for whatever came next. Because something told me this was far from over. Sunday arrived with the weight of an ultimatum. I'd spent the weekend watching my parents operate as if nothing had changed. Mom cooking elaborate meals like we were celebrating something, Dad continuing his unsolicited home improvements. They seemed convinced that if they just acted normal enough, I'd forget about their betrayal and let them stay. I wasn't forgetting anything. At noon, I found them in the living room. Dad was installing new shelf brackets I'd never asked for, and Mom was organizing my bookshelf by color instead of the author system I'd carefully maintained. "Time's up," I said simply. Mom's hands stilled on my copy of Pride and Prejudice. "Zarya, we've been thinking. What if we contributed to household expenses? We could help with utilities, groceries." "With what money?" I asked. You gave it all to Cameron. Dad set down his drill with more force than necessary. We've got savings. Retirement accounts. Then use them to get your own place. The reasonable tone I'd maintained all weekend was starting to crack. They were acting like this was a negotiation, like my home was community property they could claim through sheer persistence. Please, Mom's voice broke. Just give us a little more time. Cameron's startup is supposed to launch soon. Once it takes off, he can help us get back on our feet. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Mom, Cameron's startup is probably just another one of his schemes. Remember the food truck that never happened? The online store that sold exactly 3 items? The band that broke up before their first gig? This is different, Dad insisted, but even he sounded less convinced than before. No, it's not. And I'm not waiting around to find out. I grabbed my phone. You have 1 hour to pack and leave, or I'm calling the police. The transformation was immediate and ugly. Dad's face went crimson with rage, and he took 3 quick steps toward me. You selfish, spoiled little bitch, he snarled. We sacrificed everything for you and your brother, and this is how you repay us? You sacrificed everything for Cameron, I corrected, backing away but keeping my voice steady. I was just the backup plan. Mom tried to play peacemaker, putting herself between us. Both of you stop this. We're family. We don't treat each other like this. You're right, I said. Family doesn't lie to each other. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't expect one child to fix the mess they made spoiling the other one. Dad pushed past Mom, closing the distance between us. You think you're so much better than us? So independent? You're nothing without what we gave you. What did you give me? I shot back. Student loans? Hand-me-downs from Cameron? A childhood spent being told to be grateful for the scraps of attention you threw my way. His hand came up fast, catching me across the cheek with a sharp crack that echoed through my living room. The sting was immediate, but the shock was worse. This man who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with algebra homework had just hit me in my own home. Mom gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Tom, what have you done? I touched my cheek, feeling the heat radiating from where his hand had connected. When I spoke, my voice was ice-cold calm. Get out. Now. Before I call the police and have you arrested for assault. Dad's anger faltered, replaced by something that might have been regret. But it was too late for regret. Zarya, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. 1 hour became right now, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. Leave or I'm dialing 911. A knock at my front door interrupted the standoff. Through the peephole, I saw my elderly neighbor Mrs. Patterson, concern written across her weathered face. Everything all right in there, dear? She called through the door. I heard shouting. I opened the door slightly, acutely aware of my parents watching from behind me. Just a family disagreement, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you for checking. She studied my face, her eyes lingering on what I was sure was a red mark on my cheek. I'm right next door if you need anything, honey. Anything at all. The message was clear. I had witnesses. I had support. I wasn't as alone as my parents thought. After Mrs. Patterson left, the fight went out of Dad's posture. Mom was crying quietly, but they both started moving toward their suitcases. You'll regret this, Dad muttered as he zipped up his bag. The only thing I regret, I replied, is not seeing who you really were a long time ago. 3 weeks later, my townhouse felt like mine again. The silence wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I'd blocked my parents' numbers after the 15th voicemail from Mom begging me to reconsider, and the 5th text from Dad calling me names I won't repeat. But Charlotte is a small city in some ways, and news travels fast. My grandmother Nora, Dad's mother, called on a Tuesday evening while I was meal prepping for the week. Zarya, honey, her voice was tired in a way that broke my heart. I heard what happened. Nora had always been the steady force in our family, the one who called out favoritism when she saw it and loved us all fiercely but fairly. If anyone would understand my side, it was her. They came to you? I asked. For about 4 days, she sighed. Your father kept ranting about ungrateful children, and your mother kept crying about losing her babies. I told them they were welcome to stay, but not if they were going to badmouth you under my roof. I felt a surge of gratitude so strong it nearly brought tears to my eyes. Where are they now? Motel 6 off I-77, Nora said bluntly. They're burning through what savings they had left. And Zarya, there's more you need to know about your brother's situation. My stomach clenched. What kind of more? Cameron's girlfriend Autumn? She convinced him to take out a second mortgage on that condo to invest in cryptocurrency. Lost everything in some kind of scam. The bank's foreclosing next month. I sat down hard on my kitchen stool. Jesus. Gets worse, Nora continued. Autumn disappeared 2 weeks ago. Cleaned out their joint bank account and vanished. Word is she's done this before, finds vulnerable men, convinces them to make risky investments, then takes whatever she can and runs. The scope of the disaster was staggering. My parents had sold their house to buy Cameron a condo he was about to lose, bankrolling a woman who'd played him like a fiddle. Does he know? About Mom and Dad, I mean. Nora's laugh was bitter. Oh, he knows. They've been calling him non-stop, begging for help. You want to know what your golden boy told them? I wasn't sure I did, but I needed to hear it. He said it wasn't his problem. That they made their choices and now they had to live with them. Then he changed his phone number. The irony was almost perfect. My parents had sacrificed everything for Cameron, and when they needed him most, he'd thrown them away like garbage. Meanwhile, I, the selfish daughter, had given them 3 weeks to find alternative housing and a chance to explain themselves honestly. There's something else, Nora said quietly. They've been telling people around town that you kicked them out heartlessly. That you refused to help your own parents in their time of need. Heat flashed through me. After everything, the lies, the manipulation, the physical assault, they were trying to destroy my reputation too. Nora, can I ask you to do something for me? Anything, sweetheart. If anyone asks you about this situation, will you tell them the truth? That they sold their house to buy Cameron property, lied to me about being homeless, and expected me to house them indefinitely. Already ahead of you, she said firmly. I've set the record straight with everyone who'd listen. Your parents made their bed, and now they're lying in it. You don't owe them a thing. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen, processing everything. My parents were in a motel, burning through their last savings. Cameron was about to lose the condo they'd sacrificed everything to buy him. The startup that was supposed to justify it all had been a scam from the beginning. Part of me felt vindicated. A larger part just felt sad for the family we might have been if they'd valued honesty over favoritism. But I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. I'd learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. That family isn't a license to abuse trust, and love without boundaries isn't love at all. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Drinks tonight? I have updates on that other thing we discussed. The other thing. The defamation research I'd asked her to look into. It was time to make sure the truth was the only version of this story that mattered. 6 months later, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop on South Boulevard, reviewing the final settlement documents from the defamation case. My parents had been forced to retract their statements and pay a modest settlement, not because I needed the money, but because I needed them to understand that lies have consequences. They'd fought it at first, claiming they were just sharing their truth. But when Ashley presented witness statements from Mrs. Patterson, who'd heard the shouting and seen my bruised cheek, documentation of the property sales, and evidence of their lies about being homeless, their lawyer advised them to settle quickly. The money went straight into a savings account I'd labeled Future Security, a reminder that I was the only person responsible for my financial well-being. Zarya. A familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see Cameron standing by my table, looking older and more worn than I remembered. His usually perfect hair needed a cut, and his designer clothes had been replaced with a simple t-shirt and jeans. Can I sit? He asked. I gestured to the empty chair across from me, curious despite myself. I heard about the lawsuit, he said once he'd settled. And about Mom and Dad. Did you? I kept my voice neutral. He had the grace to look ashamed. I also heard they lost everything helping me out. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. I'm sorry, Zarya. For all of it. It was more accountability than I'd expected from him, but I wasn't ready to forgive and forget just yet. Where are you living now? I asked. Couch surfing mostly. The The condo's gone, obviously. I'm working at a restaurant downtown, nothing fancy, just trying to get back on my feet. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. Instead, I saw something I'd never seen in Cameron before, genuine humility. I know you probably don't want to hear this, he continued, but I didn't ask them to sell their house. I thought they were just helping with a down payment. When I found out what they'd actually done. He shook his head. I tried to give it back, but Autumn had already convinced me to leverage it for her investment scheme. So you lost their entire future because you trusted someone you barely knew? Yeah. The word came out flat and final. I did. And when they came to me for help after what happened, I panicked. I didn't have anything to give them. I sipped my coffee, letting him sit with the discomfort of his confession. They're in an apartment now, he said. 1 bedroom in West Charlotte. I help with groceries when I can, but it's not much. That's more than they deserved, I said quietly. Cameron's head shot up. They're our parents, Zaria. Our parents lied to me, used me, and physically assaulted me when I called them on it. You, their golden child, abandoned them completely. I'm the one who gave them time to find housing and didn't press assault charges. So don't lecture me about family obligations. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. You're right. About all of it. I've been thinking a lot about how we grew up, about the way they always made excuses for me while expecting you to be perfect. I thought I was lucky, but really I was just handicapped. I never learned to take care of myself because someone was always cleaning up my messes. It was the most honest thing Cameron had ever said to me. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, he said, and I believed him. I just wanted you to know that I understand why you did what you did. And I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to grow up. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of 30 years of family dysfunction hanging between us. Are you happy? He asked finally. I considered the question seriously. My townhouse was peaceful and wholly mine. My job was going well. I'd been promoted after landing a major client with the skills I'd honed fighting for my own interests. I had friends who respected my boundaries and a therapist who helped me understand that loving someone doesn't mean accepting abuse. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Cameron smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. Good. You deserve to be happy, Zaria. You always did. After he left, I sat in the coffee shop until closing time, thinking about everything that had led me to this moment. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. I'd learned to stand up for myself, to trust my instincts, and to value my own peace over other people's comfort. My parents had made their choice when they decided Cameron's dreams were worth more than my trust. I'd made mine when I decided my self-respect was worth more than their approval. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to say no and mean it. As I walked home through the familiar streets of Charlotte, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete contentment with the life I'd built for myself. And that, I realized, was worth more than any family approval I'd ever craved.